So that's projected to reach about $59.6 billion in sales by 2027, according to that report from cannabis analytics firm BDSA. And as you mentioned, here in the U.S., we're expected to see about $44.5 billion in sales. That means the industry domestically could grow more than 11% every single year. Now, if you take a look at this chart, you'll actually see that U.S. adult use cannabis sales account for much of the global cannabis market and are projected to do so through 2027. And by that year, adult use sales here in the U.S. are projected to make up about 78% of total cannabis spending globally, which is up from 64% this last year in 2022, Shannon.
So a lot of people are wondering, how can there still be growth even with the possible recession looming?
Yeah, it's a good question, and cannabis wasn't shielded from the economic pressures that we saw last year. We've had major companies like Curaleaf announcing layoffs and pulling out of markets like California. And that's on the back of last year when the cannabis industry only grew by about 2.3%. This, of course, happened because of contraction in mature markets like Colorado and California due to things like oversupply and a drop in wholesale pricing. Inflationary pressures on consumers likely haven't helped, although BDSA CEO Roy Bingham told me that demand has held up. Now, these projections in 2027 take into account a possible recession in the coming year or so. But as more states legalize and customers start buying legal cannabis instead of illegal cannabis, BDSA still sees growth. So take a listen to what Bingham had to say about that.
It's a gradual process, and if you look at it over a 5-year time horizon, you can see a certain inevitability to the growth in the industry. So that bodes well for the future of the companies that are well capitalized and capable of expanding in the near term.
Now, speaking of capitalization, that's been another big challenge for cannabis companies, too. They're perceived as a risky sector, so investors have fled to blue chip companies at this volatile time. Now, this wouldn't be quite as much of an issue if cannabis companies had the same sort of access to banking services and capital markets as federally legal industries do. But until the passage of safe banking or legislation like it, they'll continue to have to grow through these struggles, Shannon.
Okay, so when you're talking about this growth, which markets are driving the growth?
Absolutely. Well, growth is going to be coming from the newest adult use markets here in the U.S. because, of course, those have the greatest growth potential. So New Jersey and New York, where we have just a handful of adult use dispensaries, will be major drivers of economic growth for U.S. cannabis. But also in 2023, we could see markets like Connecticut, Missouri, Rhode Island, Vermont, and New Mexico also driving growth. Now, although, as I mentioned, the U.S. is really projected to be the global cannabis behemoth when more states come online, Bingham did project significant expansion in international markets like Germany and Mexico. And internationally, it's actually expected to outpace U.S. growth, growing by about 14% annually versus about 11% annually through 2027, Shannon.